welcome back for a new Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord dev blog update. It is the 2nd of November and today we're going to be going into more of the crafting of weapons and how the combat will work in terms of physics. So sit back, relax and enjoy tonight's dev blog on Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord. In previous games of Mount & Blade, there is an element of randomness. Of course, we all know and love this combat feature that is in the medieval masterpiece. Yes, it's been such a massive part of Mount & Blade, and the combat is famous for being so easy to learn, yet difficult to master, and making it this fast-flowing combat. But there are definitely improvements that can be done to the game. So how is it actually done in Warband? Now, in Warband, each weapon and variable, it's hard-coded to deal with a randomly selected amount of damage from a predefined range. So for example, if you hit a certain area of the body, it's definitely going to do this amount of damage with this weapon. It doesn't change in terms of using momentum unless you're on a horse or something like that. But on the ground, the time doesn't really come into it and other things like that. There is still one part of damage calculation that can't be controlled, and in Warband, it can't be predicted by the player, which makes it a little bit random. Now this does somewhat affect competitive play on the most part, because even if you practice for so long, there's still an element of randomness to it that can change every time. So what are they trying to do in Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord? What they're trying to do is make a physics-based system that will take into account the physical properties of a weapon and use a simulation to derive the combat stats such as weapon speed and of course damage. They've got this physical statistics calculation that is also implemented into the crafting of the weapons, and I think this is very exciting, this part of it. So we all know there's going to be crafting in Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord. We all know that's going to be a massive part, and you can choose what weapons you want to make and how you make them. Now of course, when crafting these weapons, the player first selects a template. A sword, for instance, is made up of a blade, a guard, a grip and a pommel. Now each one of these things will give the weapon certain advantages or disadvantages depending on which ones you choose, and of course there are other factors that come into it. But this all adds into the physics simulation. So a particularly large guard may increase the wielder's hand armor, for example. Each part also has certain physical properties that are used for calculations. Once again, the player selects each part. All these physical properties, depending on which parts you choose for your sword or weapon, all add up together and they calculate in the game in live time the overall properties of your weapon and what effects they have on an enemy. So what are these different properties? First one is of course length. This determines things like the reach of the weapon. So depending on how far you're standing back depends on how much damage you do. Maybe if it's a short sword, you're definitely going to do more damage the closer you are, and you'll have an advantage over the long swords if you're up close and personal. But of course with a spear you'll be better standing back and you'll do more damage that way. The second one is mass. Now this is one of the most important things because the weight of the weapon and how big it is definitely going to affect it. So this can have massive advantages and disadvantages. For example, if you have a light weapon like a rapier, it's going to be faster, but it's going to do less damage to a player. But if it's heavier, it will be slower, but may do more damage, of course up to a certain point. It's not just going to go the heavier it is, the more damage it does until infinity. But if it's too heavy and slow, the weapon you're playing as will make contact with your opponent before it can reach its full speed, and that means it will do a lot less damage and feel very bumbly and ineffective. And finally, the last factor is weight distribution and inertia. Unlike thrusts, swing speed is affected not only by weight but also the distribution of weight around the pivot point of the swings. Increase the weight may increase the damage within certain boundaries, but it will also increase the inertia, meaning more energy will be required to achieve sufficient speed on impact. Thus these weapons will typically be slower and increasing the weight with only positive effect damage up to a certain point. Now not only do we have this new devlog, but there are some new screenshots that we have actually found. These are supposedly leaked screenshots, so I'm going to show them to you now. It does sort of indicate with this devlog, I think some of them were taken from it, but there are some new ones that we haven't really seen before. So for example, there is a picture of a mace. Now this mace is something we've never really seen in Mount & Blade. Bannerlord in the gameplays or anything like that. So that's going to be different, interesting. We can definitely get morning stars and things like that. There's also a picture of a weapon with a really cool looking hilt and a sheath and a scabbard. So it looks like you're going to be able to design your sheath and scabbard as well, and we can see all the weight, the weapon reach, the thrust, and all the stats of it down on the right hand side, and how much it's going to cost, and of course you'll be able to name these. And of course there's a sort of bardiche axe sort of weapon as well, with a what looks like to be a rope handle. Maybe you can change this. Maybe if you have no handle, you're not going to be able to use it quite as well because it'll be a bit slippery in your hand. I don't know how they're going to work that out, but that's definitely going to be something. Maybe the handling will be changed because that's statistic down in the bottom right. But that's pretty much everything we've got for this Bannerlord update. I really hope you guys enjoyed this. Remember to stay subscribed to the channel for all the Bannerlord updates and news. But until then, I will see you in the next one.